Today I'm going to talk about the game included in issue 90 of the French magazine Victis. The game is called Loups, Gris and Atlantique, which means Grey Wolves in the Atlantic. It is a solitaire game where the player takes the role of a U-boat leader, and your mission is to lead your U-boat patrolling the Atlantic, and you will trying to sink as many enemy targets as possible, and also it's a good idea if you come back home alive. The game does not come with English rules, however. It only has French rules included in the magazine, and you can find online Spanish rules. I still thought I would make this review because there's still a couple of million people out there that can read these languages, and maybe you're one of them. And if you're not, who knows, maybe you're just curious and you want to know a little bit more about this game. The game is basically this cardboard insert in the middle of the magazine. Here you have the counters that you're supposed to cut out, but of course I did not do that, so I just made a photocopy and then I made my own counters. Here you have the map, and the rulebook really is part of the magazine. You cannot pull it out unless of course you want to destroy the magazine. Like, look at this. This is a page from an historical article that starts before the rulebook, and it is literally in the middle of the rulebook. There's the last page of the rulebook, and here this is the first page of the next article. So you really cannot take out this. And the rulebook is not long. There are tables here and there, little sub-rules here and there. So basically what I did, I just made photocopies of everything. So when I'm playing, I just have everything spread out in front of me. This is the record sheet, and of course you will want to make photocopies of this. At the beginning of each game you will choose a submarine out of a list of 4 possible types, and there are submarines that are bigger with big weapons and a lot of torpedoes, but of course they're also less maneuverable and they are easier for the enemy to spot. And on the contrary, you can have other submarines which are smaller, sneakier, they can just hide better, but at the same time they have less weapons. So you will choose a submarine from the list, and then you will record here the stats of that specific model. Also, you can choose special options for your crew and for your captain. You can have a crew that specializes in certain things, so has a certain bonus in certain type of roles for certain actions, and you can have a captain that, again, is better at doing certain things. In the middle of the record sheet, you have a pretty nice looking profile of your submarine, and you will use this section of that sheet to keep track of the damage that you take in battle. Every time that your submarine takes a hit, you will draw a cheat from this cup, and this cheat will tell you where the damage needs to be applied and what type of damage you're taking in that area. Certain damages will force you to bar one of the spaces corresponding to that area, and some other ones will force you to trace a cross. Crosses are much worse damages because they cannot be repaired, but overall, as you can imagine, the more of these hits you take, the more the chances that your submarine will end up at the bottom of the ocean and that you will lose the game. In each game, you will place on the map a marker that will indicate the weather, and the weather will change during the game. You will roll, and different types of weather will give you different modifiers. Then you have the marker indicating your position. It starts from there. You also have this marker that indicates that your submarine has been identified by the enemy, so you put it face down. Then when they spot you during the game, they flip it face up, and of course you have a sort of penalties. Also, you will roll to determine the area where you place your zone of patrol marker. The idea is that you will leave your home from there. You can choose if you want to move in this direction, closer to England, faster route, but much more dangerous. So if you want to go this way, much safer, but also longer. Once you reach this area, however, you cannot choose anymore. You have to move in this direction, reach your zone of patrol, and then come back here, and then here you can choose again. The idea is that, and then of course you have to go back home. The idea is that you do this trip around the map and you come back home alive, and in the meanwhile you destroy as many enemy ships as possible, and that of course will earn you victory points. A standard turn opens with a navigation phase in which you move your U-boat by a number of areas between 1 and 3. There are ways of going faster, but the basic idea is between 1 and 3. After you move, you will look at the colors of the areas that you went through, and you will resolve an event based on one of those colors. Doesn't matter how many colors you went across, you only resolve one. And there is an order of priority. Green comes before red, red comes before yellow, and yellow comes before white. So for example, if you were here and you moved from yellow, yellow, and then into white, then yellow comes before white, and then you will resolve a yellow event. If you were here, you did yellow, white, and green, then green comes before everything else, and then you resolve a green event. But what are these color-coded events? Well, you roll a die, and you will cross-reference the result on a table that is, represented by that color. So you have the red table, yellow, white, and green table. And these tables will give you the number and types of enemies that you're encountering, and they do give you different situations. In fact, the red one, for example, will give you a lot of enemy airplanes and enemy destroyers just ready to sink you and not many targets. And quite the contrary, the green areas will give you a lot of juicy targets and convoys that are just ready to be sunk by you, and not so many escorting vessels or other enemies that can respond. Once you have the number and type of enemy units you encounter in that turn, then you draw the corresponding number of cheats from the pools. You have a pool for the targets. There are going to be different types of targets, and then different types of enemy airplanes and different types of destroyers that can get on your way. Then when it's finally time to resolve the battle, you will do it by using these tables here. Each table represents a different event or phase in the battle. Each table has a series of modifiers that apply to that specific situation. Now, after you take into account all the modifiers, you roll a 10-sided die, and the modified result will tell you what the effect of your action is. So you will read the text corresponding to that effect, and sometimes it will just be a general effect, but very often it will direct you to the next step of the battle, which is represented by another table with other modifiers, another text, and very often that again, you just keep circling and moving from table to table, from paragraph to paragraph. I'll give you an example. This is the table that you use when you're trying to sneak past the escorting enemy vessels, and suppose that you roll a modified 4 or less, then the U-boat is found by the enemy, it is attacked by the escorting vessels, then you move on to this table, which resolves the enemy attack, or suppose you use this table, which actually you use when you're attacking. You take into account all the modifiers, you roll. If you roll a modified 4 or less, then the target is missed, your U-boat is found by the enemies, and you go back to the approach phase, but now you have different stats because the target is escaping. Or suppose you rolled an 11 or more, then the target has been hit in a critical zone, the U-boat is found, and now you have a bonus on the hit test. So you move to this other table that tells you what type of hit you dealt. Basically is the target is only immobilized and not sunk if it sinks slowly or if it sinks fast. So sometimes the tables will not directly to another table. It's more like a user rule, but ultimately sooner or later you will have to start another chain of events, and you'll have to start moving back and forth again from table to table. So basically, to me, this feels as a mini paragraph based game. Now, the game has several good things about it. First, it is simple and easy, and yet at the same time it gives you a good sense of historical feel. Probably, I believe, because of the narrative, I would say almost literary quality of combat. It's just this story that develops paragraph after paragraph and table after table. You have a decent range of options, things that you can try, different types of crews. There even is a hint of role-playing in the fact that you can choose the personality of your captain. And some of the battles that come out of the system can really be interesting. There are cases where you're attacking a large convoy and you're trying to sneak past the escorting ships. They catch you, they start throwing anti-submarine grenades at you. You can choose if you want to go deeper, which is dangerous, or if you want to just evade for real, or if you want to pretend that you're evading, in reality you're just hiding in the proximity and ready to attack the convoy again. So there are different things that can happen. Of course, as the game progresses, your submarine becomes weaker and weaker. You start taking hit, you start embarking water, and choices become tougher. It is not a bad game at all. The big problem that I have with it, however, is that like in many paragraph-based game, well, the experience can become pretty repetitive. And here you don't have a large manual like you have in Ranger, for example. It really is just a couple of paragraphs that you keep going back and forth to. And after a while, that page with all those tables can feel a little claustrophobic. Sure, you also use other rules, there are other things, but 90% it's really there. So the problem is really that after playing that a couple of times, I started feeling that the game was becoming a little too repetitive. This being said, if you do not mind paragraph-based games, if you're interested in the theme, I think this can still be a game that you may want to give a try to. As for me personally, I do not think this is a game that will play very often in the future, unless an expansion or several expansions come out that increase the range of options that you have and things you can do. Then maybe that page with the table will feel a little less claustrophobic, and that will change things for me.